Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine this. You wake up. You already know today's most important task. Maybe it's replying to an email, maybe finishing a presentation, maybe studying, or maybe it's just cleaning your room.
You tell yourself today, I'm definitely going to do it.
But somehow, you end up reorganizing your desk, checking Instagram, watching YouTube, making coffee, answering messages, researching unrelated topics, and suddenly it's night. The task still isn't done, and then comes the sentence every person with ADHD has said at least once. Maybe I'm just lazy. Well, what if I told you that this one sentence might be the biggest lie you've ever believed about yourself?
I know this feeling because I've literally lived it. Sometimes I sit in front of my laptop, not because I don't know what to do. I know exactly what needs to be done, but my body refuses to begin. It's almost like there's an invisible wall between me and the first click. Meanwhile, my brain happily lets me spend 40 minutes researching the perfect productivity app instead of actually doing the work. If you've ever experienced this, you're not alone. And more importantly, there's a scientific reason for it. Here's something strange. If you're lazy, then why do you feel guilty all day? Why do you keep thinking about the task? Why does your brain totally refuse to relax? Why do you promise yourself, I'll start in 5 minutes for the next 6 hours? Today, we're going to answer that. And by the end of this explainer, I don't just want you to understand ADHD better, I want you to stop blaming yourself.
Now, what's really interesting here is something nobody talks about. What actually is laziness? Most people think laziness means not doing anything, but that's just not true. Real laziness is being unwilling to put in effort. Here's the difference. A lazy person usually isn't stressed about avoiding the task. They've chosen not to do it. But someone with ADHD often spends the entire day thinking about the task, feeling anxious, feeling guilty, and feeling ashamed while still being unable to start. Those are two completely different experiences. One is unwillingness, the other is difficulty with self-regulation and getting started.
So what's actually happening? Think of your brain like a car. Most people can press the accelerator and the car moves. With ADHD, the engine works, the wheels work, the driver knows where to go, but sometimes the accelerator doesn't respond until something makes the trip feel interesting, urgent, challenging, or new. That's why many people with ADHD can spend hours completely focused on a hobby, yet struggle to answer one simple email. It's not because they lack intelligence. It's not because they don't care. It's because the brain systems involved in motivation and executive functioning work differently. But wait a second. If motivation is the problem, then why do people with ADHD sometimes work for 10 straight hours without stopping? How can someone who can't focus suddenly become unstoppable? That seems to completely contradict everything we've just talked about, right? Actually, it proves the point. And once you understand this, your entire view of ADHD changes. You see, ADHD isn't really a lack of attention. It's a difficulty regulating attention. When something is exciting, new, emotionally rewarding, or incredibly interesting, the ADHD brain can lock onto it with incredible intensity. This is called hyperfocus. The problem isn't that attention disappears. The problem is that it's much harder to direct attention where you want it, especially when the task feels boring, repetitive, or emotionally uncomfortable. So if laziness isn't the real problem, and even motivation isn't the full story, then what actually causes you to freeze when it's time to begin? Why do you suddenly become productive the night before a deadline? Think about it. You've ignored an assignment for 2 weeks. Nothing happened. Then, 24 hours before it's due, you somehow find the energy to work for 8 straight hours. Did your brain suddenly become disciplined overnight? No. What changed wasn't your personality, it was the environment. The deadline created an environment your ADHD brain responds strongly to: urgency. Researchers and clinicians have actually long observed that many people with ADHD are far more likely to engage when tasks become urgent, novel, highly interesting, or personally meaningful. Those specific conditions just make it easier to activate motivation and sustain effort. And this brilliantly illustrates the part nobody explained to me for years. Most people think, if I know what I need to do, I'll do it. But ADHD doesn't usually affect knowing, it affects doing. Imagine someone tells you, go push that heavy car. You understand the instructions perfectly. You know exactly where to push, but your muscles just don't have enough strength. Would anyone call you lazy? Of course not. That's similar to executive dysfunction. Your brain knows the destination perfectly. The difficulty is generating the mental energy to begin and keep going. Executive functions help us plan, activate, monitor, and complete tasks, and these systems are commonly affected in ADHD. Unfortunately, the longer you struggle, the louder another voice gets.
You've wasted another day. Everyone else can do this. You're lazy. You're irresponsible. Over time, those thoughts become automatic. And here's the cruel irony. The more shame you feel, the harder the task becomes. Research increasingly suggests that procrastination isn't just poor time management, it is closely tied to emotional regulation. Anxiety, fear of failure, overwhelm, and self-criticism can all make starting a task even more difficult.
So the crucial point is that the cycle looks exactly like this. 1. Task. 2. Stress. 3. Avoidance. 4. Temporary relief. 5. Guilt. 6. Even more stress. 7. Even harder to start next time. That cycle can repeat for years.
But here is the good news. If laziness isn't the real problem, then trying to be less lazy probably isn't the answer. Instead, we need to make the task easier for your brain to activate. Stop trying to be less lazy and start learning how your brain works. You're not trying to become a different person. You're learning how your brain works. And once you understand that, everything starts changing.
So how do we do that? Tip 1, stop waiting to feel motivated. This was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn. Motivation often comes after you start, not before. Your only goal is to begin, not to finish. Even opening the document counts. That tiny action reduces the mental barrier and gives your brain a chance to build momentum.
Tip 2, make the task ridiculously small. Don't tell yourself, I'm going to clean the whole room. Tell yourself, I'm only picking up 5 things. The smaller the first step, the smaller the resistance. Tip 3, create artificial urgency. Remember how deadlines suddenly wake up your brain? You can recreate that effect. Set a 20-minute timer. Race the clock. Turn it into a challenge. You're no longer trying to finish the project. You're trying to beat the timer. Many ADHD experts recommend adding urgency or challenge because it helps engage motivation. Tip 4, try body doubling. Now this sounds strange, but it's surprisingly effective for many people. Work while someone else is quietly present to stay engaged. They don't need to help. They don't even need to talk. Sometimes just having another person nearby makes it much easier to stay engaged. Research is still developing, but body doubling has become a widely used strategy within the ADHD community to support executive functioning and accountability. Tip 5, replace self-criticism with curiosity. Instead of saying, I'm so lazy, ask yourself, what is making this task hard right now? Is it boring, too big, confusing, emotionally uncomfortable? Your answer changes the solution. Self-compassion isn't about making excuses. It's about removing the shame that can make starting even harder. If you spent years believing you're lazy, I want you to remember one thing. Lazy people usually don't spend the entire day worrying about the work they aren't doing. People with ADHD often do. That guilt, that frustration, that feeling of wanting to move but somehow staying stuck doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you broken. And it certainly doesn't define your worth. Your brain simply responds to motivation differently. The moment you stop fighting your brain and start working with it, progress becomes possible. Not overnight, not perfectly, but one small step at a time. Before we finish, I want you to think about someone. Maybe it was a teacher, a parent, a boss, or maybe it was your own voice. Someone who told you you're smart, if only you weren't so lazy. Maybe you've heard that sentence so many times that you don't even question it anymore. It became your identity. But what if, for years, you've been judging yourself using rules that were never designed for your brain? Think about how many opportunities, relationships, dreams, and moments of self-confidence have been buried under one single word, lazy. Now imagine removing that label, not because you're making excuses, but because you're finally replacing judgment with understanding, to remove unnecessary shame. Understanding doesn't remove ADHD, but it removes unnecessary shame. And sometimes that's the first step toward real change. If nobody has ever told you this, let me be the first. You're probably not lazy. You're exhausted from fighting a brain that demands a different approach. That doesn't mean every unfinished task is caused by ADHD. It doesn't mean we stop taking responsibility. But it does mean we stop using shame as our main source of motivation. Because shame rarely creates action. It usually creates avoidance. The goal isn't to work harder than everyone else. The goal is to work with your brain instead of against it. If this explainer helped you understand yourself a little better, subscribe to Half Brain Active. This channel isn't about pretending ADHD is a superpower, and it isn't about making excuses. It's about understanding how the brain actually works, using science, real experiences, and practical strategies that you can use in everyday life. If there's one ADHD struggle you'd like me to explain next, leave it in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if someone in your life has ever called themselves lazy, share this explainer with them. It might be exactly what they needed to hear. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I'm just lazy," pause and ask yourself a different question. What is making this task difficult for my brain?